Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pop Corner episode 6. And today we just got, it's super late right now, so a little bit more quiet. Child upstairs, but it's super late for us, recording wise. But we just watched Scream 6.
7 o'clock showing, and it's actually an early showing, so we went before Friday.
Yes, yeah. So if this episode comes out on a Friday, it'll basically be a miracle, but we'll see how it goes.
Heck yeah.
Normally we have been doing like an introductory kind of warm-up question. We're going to skip that today, and we're going to kind of forego that in favor of doing our non-spoilery review first.
Yep.
We'll probably do that for about maybe 10-15 minutes, and then the rest of the video after that will be full spoilers.
The juice.
Yes, and I will have a timestamp of when the spoiler ends, but don't worry, you'll get the full effect of our review in the opening non-spoilery section. We'll just kind of describe why we like, or I guess hypothetically dislike the movie in the second half, not going to lie.
I just want to say, if it wasn't for the fact that it's super late, I would be super ecstatic, like speaky-wise.
Yes.
Because I am hyped. That movie was hype.
Yep.
I was hyped going in, and I'm hyped coming out.
Okay, well, I guess with that being said, we can get right into it again. No spoilers. This is Scream 6. They follow up to the direct reboot, sequel, requel, Scream 5. And with that being said, what's your overall thoughts?
All right, so, well, this, again, of course, is the non-spoiler section, so we won't talk about killers, kills, nothing like that. We'll keep it straight up.
Broad strokes. Broad strokes.
So the movie, as we all know, if you've seen the trailers, is set in New York City this time, the Big Apple. Jason tried it once. That movie is seen as a yikes.
Ghostface takes Manhattan.
Ghostface 100% took Manhattan here, I would say.
Took me.
Ooh. So we start off in New York City, and with the trailers, I guess we'll talk about it in spoilers, technically, if we just don't want to say anything that hasn't been said before this movie. Right. But they do explain why they're in New York. It's not just like, oh, hey, we're spawning them here just because. But there is a reason that our group here is in New York.
I think that's reasonable enough to... I think we could probably say the reason.
Yeah, we'll keep it.
You don't think?
Yeah, we'll just say anything that is already generally known from trailers.
Okay.
So they're going to New York, and Ghostface is going crazy, going ham here. And from the trailers, you can see that he is a lot more threatening. He is out for blood.
Yes.
And dang, does he go ham?
This movie is 100% visceral.
Cotton.
100% cotton, that's for sure. That's a callback. And just like that callback there, this movie does the same thing that Scream 5 does. And there's a lot of references to the rest of the franchise. We see that Kirby, a character from Scream 4, returns. As well as, of course, Gale Weathers, portrayed by Courtney Cox, previously Arquette. But that's fine. And it's no secret that those are the only two... those are the two
returning
legacy characters
that are legacy.
Yeah, that are, they're touted out. And, this movie does, in fact, not have Sidney.
Yeah.
Which we knew that.
I was going to say, I mean, if you were one of the ones hoping that Sidney was secretly in here, it's not really a spoiler because they already confirmed that she's not in it, and she's not in it.
Yeah.
But, we'll talk about it in spoiler things, but there are theories of Stu coming back. We'll touch on that in spoiler section because they never... said yes, and they never said no. So we'll talk about that in spoiler section.
Yeah,
but Sidney is a no-go. So if you were hoping Sidney does secretly make her way in here, I'm going to break it to you. She's not.
Yes. But I guess as an overall thought, like we already talked about, there's a lot of those references to earlier movies, which made Scream 5 and really gave me confidence with this production company.
Radio Silence. You're the GOAT.
I think in that instance, I think they have completely gained my trust for Scream 7 whenever that does come out.
Officially in writing, by the way.
Officially in writing, and I'm really excited.
Yeah.
But I think the meta commentary is still here as well. That kind of lives on with Mindy.
Yeah, because
I always want to say Mandy.
With Scream 5, we obviously meet Mindy, which is related to Randy, and she carries on his genes very well. She is super nerdy, super meta, this is what happens in horror movies. She does it very well, and I think she's definitely the closest to Randy. Maybe Kirby was good in 4, but I think Mindy probably carries the torch as the most Randy-ish we've ever gotten since him. we've seen other nerdy characters, but never as good as Mindy, in my opinion. But with all these characters in mind, we do get introduced with new characters you see in the trailers, and just like 5, I feel like they're all well liked. Some get more scenes than others, and it's not because, like, if you've never seen our podcast before, we talk about Scream 3, where like Scream 3 specifically, there's a lot of characters you kind of just don't remember their names.
Yeah.
First time watching this, I remember like everyone's name right off the rip. So
Yeah, I'm just bad with names, so don't take anything that I'm doing as any kind of bit of confidence. But I guess with the idea of characters in mind, one thing I did want to talk about in the review is that all of these characters felt like there was ample enough screen time.
Yeah.
One issue I had in previous films was that the killers or killer, whatever the situation is, didn't get enough screen time to where it was feasible for me as the viewer to outsmart or figure out who the actual killer is before the reveal. Now, I think this movie was a little bit different in that regard. I think every character gets pretty even. I mean, unless, of course, there's a character killed off early on.
Yeah.
They don't get even screen time. But they're not the killer.
Yeah,
So.
there's not a character that's in this movie that is just like completely just forced in the background that you're like, oh, I forgot this character existed.
Right.
Like everyone is showing up all the time. Like you know the characters, you know the names, you know their characteristics.
Yep.
Whether it be from the old like legacy characters to like the old like Scream 5 characters to the newer ones that are added. And yeah, I think all the characters are amazing. There's a few we'll talk about, but overall, great. I think so. Like if you enjoyed 5, I just want to say if you enjoyed Scream 5, you will love this movie.
Yeah.
I personally
can
think that
agree with
this
that.
movie was better than 5.
This movie,
But I love 5, so
looking at it in a sense of like franchises, you've got Scream 1 to Scream 2. And then, think whatever you want about Scream 2 as a movie, how well it works as a sequel. And that is a almost direct continuation of the first movie. This movie is very similar in that regard. Obviously, there's liberties taken in between those gaps in movie. But I think Scream 6 works better as a sequel to Scream 5 than Scream 2 works for Scream 1, like the original movies.
gotcha.
So I really I enjoy this movie a lot. I do have some criticisms, but I don't know. None of it really outweighs anything. But if I had to, kind of levy some criticisms, and I promise I'll get into it more,
With the spoiler.
with the spoilers. But as visceral and as bloody, gruesome, disgusting as some of the kills were in this movie.
Yeah, like what they do say. Sorry to cut you off here.
No, yeah, you're good.
I was just gonna implement on that is that like they weren't lying when they said this is the goriest and like ruthless Ghostface ever in the movie.
Right.
Like he goes crazy. He does not care.
Special shout out to the opening scene. I loved it. It was
so
great.
good.
And while we'll talk about that opening scene in our spoiler discussion, definitely one of my favorite openings, which is like,
That's what I was gonna ask because there was a lot of people who like saw it and was critically reviewing it from like the big critics who got it early.
Yeah.
They were saying that this was the opening, like the best opening since the original. Do you agree with that? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I was just curious because that's one big thing that a lot of people have been seeing is that a lot of the bigger critics were saying that this is the best since the original, and it's up there,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so while there are many positives in the sense of, the opening scene and, the very gory kills, everything like that, and there are kills, there are plenty of kills, however you want to say it, or at the very least attacks. No spoilers, but I feel like the movie just really doesn't want to pull the trigger half the time with some of these characters.
I feel like this is the movie that like there's a lot more like you think they might be dead or you think they might die, but then they don't.
Yes,
This
yeah.
one does that a lot.
It does-
We won't obviously say characters, like certain characters here. We won't name who until later, but there are a few characters that get the work.
Yes.
And then they're just like, all right.
Unreasonably so, and then the movie just says, "Oh, we'll let them live." And this was an issue I have with Scream 5, that they did the same thing. They didn't kill enough of the newly introduced characters. Now, I kind of set that aside with the idea that with Scream 6, they could potentially use that for emotional value and kill off some of these characters. And while I won't spoil anything, it doesn't use that to its full effect. Leave that as what it was. That was one of my bigger issues. Did you have any complaints with the movie?
Not really. It's really hard for me because like all the other Scream movies that we reviewed, I've seen them billions of times. If this is your first time watching, because this is a new movie, I'm like the biggest Scream fan.
Yes.
I am like all Scream 1 through 5, love them all. Even 3 though, even though that's definitely the downfall of the series and the only one that I would say is like objectively not that good.
Yeah.
I'll stand by the entire series that it's consistently good. And
Okay.
I would say that like with this freshly in my mind and not being able to critique it a lot like I have the others over time,
Yeah.
there's not a lot other than the same that you have, is that there are certain characters that you're like, they're alive, they lived, or like I'm surprised they didn't die. Like,
Right.
but like there's a lot of kills in here with that in mind too. Like it's even though that they kind of like ease off some characters and don't pull the trigger. There's a lot of people that die in this movie.
Yes.
Like, I feel like
yeah.
one of my things with 5 is that there wasn't a whole lot of deaths. Mm-hmm. With this one, there is a lot. Like even though they pull back on some, they still go ham. There's a lot of kills here,
I agree.
and I never actually kept count on what the kill count was, but I would say it's definitely one of the higher ones.
Yeah.
He goes in.
He ghosts in. But another thing in comparing this movie to its predecessor, Scream 5, that I wanted to say was that while Ghostface definitely does come off as more deadly in this movie overall, all around, an issue I had was that Scream 5 felt like it understood what Ghostface needed to be as like an iconic character, like a slasher villain all around. It had the incredible shots that, they look like they could be a wallpaper at any given time.
Yeah, they shot 5 amazingly.
5 was an incredibly well shot movie, and this movie's a little more, I want to say personal, a lot more close to the vest. It's following the characters more closely. Not as many as those wide out shots where
Yeah.
you get a lot of those really cool moments.
I was gonna say
They're not gone,
Yeah,
but there's definitely not as many, and honestly, some of the best ones are shown in the trailer.
yeah. There are still a lot of good shots in this movie. Like I wouldn't say that they completely just yoinked them out.
Oh,
it was
definitely
like, oh man, we don't need to worry about that anymore. But I do think 5 was shot fairly better because the best pictures that I think of Ghostface is in 5.
Yes.
Like that hospital scene, one of the coolest looking shots of Ghostface ever,
Right.
in my opinion. But Ghostface looks super sick in this movie. And as you see from the trailer, we won't really talk about it until spoilers, but in the trailer you realize that like he's got a worn down mask. So like he's looking a lot different in this one than your traditional just new white mask. Mm-hmm. And that comes into play a lot. Like there's a reason that it's used, and I really love the plot and the arc of as to why it's being used and as to
That's fair.
what's going on. And I just want to say that like it was so good. It's hard to like say how amazing it was. Like the movie, I don't want to I try to think of negatives, but like
I have 2 more I can throw
go
out
for
right
it.
now.
For me, it's hard to come with negatives because it's so good.
You can defend, I'll attack, but
Go
I
for
still loved this movie. And when we get into our, I want to say final verdicts, but it's, just for the non-spoilery section, we'll give our, number scores. But 2 other, these are much more minor critiques. One of them a little bit more. I don't think it uses the setting as well. New
don't?
York, big city.
You don't think so?
I think the closest it comes to doing what I wanted this movie to do a lot of was the train scene.
Yeah.
Crowded environments,
Yeah.
and the fear isn't that you're alone with the killer. The fear is that you don't know who the killer is.
They use
and
that a
you're
lot though. They do use it like
They do,
I know what you mean.
but it mostly comes from the friend group and the larger cast of friends being confined to the apartment or another location that we'll get into later.
yeah, a lot of
But that train scene stands out to me as
I agree.
superb.
There most of the scenes are with our like
Yes.
group, and like there's not a lot of scenes where like they're out in public. Like I know what you mean. Like they're not out in public in like
Right.
the train area but like those scenes when they do pop up, they're cracked. They're
I know.
shot and they're done very well. And like there's a lot of misdirects in this movie, by the way.
Right.
Like I'm gonna be real honest with you before like obviously I won't say character names. I guessed partially correct. That's what I'll say, because I don't want to say if there is a killers. I'll just say that when it comes to guessing the killers or whatever, I would give myself like a little bit of credit, but not a lot.
That's fair.
I don't know what you stated. I don't know if you guessed anything correctly or not, but
I had the right idea, but wrong premise. And
Yeah,
there's another thing. There's actually a complaint I have that I can't talk about without doing spoilers. So maybe I'll talk about that first when we go into spoilers. That way, right
get
after.
off. Yeah, get it
Yeah,
off.
we'll
Just
just
from here.
write it right there. But otherwise, did you notice? And this is just me, my dumb brain. As soon as the first 20 minutes of the movie, how many songs played? How many different licensed songs played in the first 20 minutes of the movie?
I didn't really pay attention, to be honest.
I
Was there a
shit
lot,
you not.
or-
I swear, every scene change, there was a new song. And a lot of them, like, I'm not saying you can't have pop songs in a movie like this or whatever. Or, like, I didn't know all the songs. That's not what I'm getting at either. But it just felt like it was jarring to me.
That's interesting. I didn't even catch that. So
I found it taking me out of the experience just for a minute. At the same time, it was counteracting the incredible acting in this movie.
Oh, dude.
I think the acting, phenomenal.
With acting. All the characters are amazing,
Yes.
but I just want to point out that with Scream 5, a lot of people I saw on the internet were talking about Sam's character.
Yes,
Sam's character, I think her name's like Melissa or something in real life.
I'm not sure.
But she got a lot of hate for Scream 5. Like, there's a lot of fans that I saw on Twitter, like, actually, like, straight up harassing her to that point. To where, like, dude, don't do that, first of all. If you don't like someone's character or acting,
Does
whatever.
she have a Twitter?
I think so.
She better.
But, like, to any person who goes out there and harasses actors because, oh, they weren't good at this character, stop. I'm sorry,
Right.
stop. But, like,
Most of the time, it's the script they're given anyway.
yeah, but like 5, she was good. Like, I don't even know why people were like, hey, like, I think that like in 5 she was a little bland, but she wasn't bad either, and her acting was great. I don't know why anyone got that idea of like, oh, she acted horribly. But I think that's just because everyone was on the train of like Jenna Ortega,
Yeah.
which Jenna Ortega is amazing anyway. But I just wanted to point that out, that like a lot of people had doubts on Sam's character in 5, and in 6, dude, I feel like she carries. Scream 6, she is one of like, dude,
Outstanding turnaround.
Amazing.
Like where I don't agree that she was bad in 5. I definitely thought she was a lesser interesting character.
Yeah.
The best plot point being, spoilers for Scream 5, that she is Billy Loomis's daughter.
yes.
Now this time around, it's, I don't know if there was criticism heard and received. Her plot line, her just the way she carries herself as a character is just far more interesting.
Yes.
And it definitely felt like they kind of gave her the Sydney arc of, facing your fears.
Yeah, instead of running away from it. Yeah.
And like it happened at a much faster and honestly refreshing like rate.
Yeah.
And like, she goes into this movie, of course she's like, she's prepared, I would say. A little more, we'll get into it, of course, but I just really, overall, I found the acting of this movie enjoyable. I found the way it handles Ghostface super, super enjoyable, watching the bloody, visceral, the violence, honestly,
Yeah.
quite frankly. This movie is like, it's not sleek about it.
Yeah, it straight up shows you everything, dude.
Yeah.
It goes all out.
It's
and
great.
Like, and it's one of those things that I was worried about specifically going into this movie. The thing I like about Scream is not only is it a thriller slasher, the comedic effect is what also reels me in. I love the meta commentary stuff, and I love the comedic effect that like some characters give off and like the references to movies. And going into this movie, I was kind of worried because the trailers don't show any of that other than like that he's coming in. He's gory. He's going for slashing. He's shotgunning it up. Like, one of the things I was worried about is that these things would be discarded, but they're not. They're in there.
And I think this movie strikes the right balance.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, honestly, I do think 5 was a little light on the comedy.
Yeah.
All things considered, and that tackled a heavy subject in 5 as well with Dewey's death, of course. But Scream 6, I think the comedy shines through a lot through the returning characters, and then just funny moments, like moments they're not set as a joke in the movie.
But to us, it's hilarious.
But to us, it's like, like a character just being dumb or completely oblivious to a scenario. It's funny to us as the viewer, and I think that's done really well.
I mean, it's not really a spoiler because it doesn't really matter other than for the funny joke. What do we call the 4?
Oh, the core 4 is what we're
The
going
core
for.
4.
Yeah, which no one likes, of course, but Chad. And so, yeah, there's that. But without going,
Yeah,
we're about
should,
20 minutes
we
in.
should go to the spoiler section. But like, I just wanted to say, since we're doing the non-spoiler section here, that like, watch the movie. The
Yeah.
movie. If you're a fan of Scream, like it doesn't matter. Like, if you didn't like 5, give it a chance because I personally think 6 was loads better, and I love 5. Like going into this movie, I was like, I don't know if it'll be better than 5 because the reviews were saying it was, and
Right.
it is, in my opinion. But like, if you're a fan of Scream in general, like any of the movies, I think you'll enjoy this one. There's a lot of twists. There's a few scenes where the tension in this movie is crazy. This is the most tension Scream movie ever. I was on the edge of my seats for certain scenes.
I know.
I was literally like, oh God, is this gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? Like they don't pull punches when it comes to tension in this one.
It was a really enjoyable experience, and yes, I agree. Base level review. Go and see this movie as soon as you can. You don't want to be spoiled.
Yeah, don't be spoiled. Funny enough, he was spoiled for something, and it was incorrect. So
Yes.
it's hilarious.
Yeah, so what I was expecting wasn't even true. So I would love to say that I went into it with an expectation of, maybe who or how many killers there would be or whatever, and I was just wrong. So that was a fun
Twist.
kind of a nice little misdirect here.
Yeah.
But with that being said, no further ado on
Let's
this.
get your rating because you had more negatives than I did. I don't really have much to say
Okay.
for negatives. So
Okay.
I want to see your rating, and then I'll give mine, and
So-
spoiler, baby.
So for if you haven't seen the previous episodes for Scream 1, that was at the time, of course, first movie, highest rated Scream movie I had with 8, leaning 8.5. And that's, we do a 0.5 scale up till 10, of course. And 2 and 3, they degraded in quality. 4, it was up a little bit more, but I still didn't love it as much as the original.
Yeah.
Scream 5, I gave it the same exact score as Scream 1. 8, leaning 8.5.
Okay.
Now, everything I've said so far, a lot were minor nitpicks that kind of mildly took me out of the experience, but it doesn't change the fact that this movie has the best as far as tension. It really leans into it, something that I didn't like about the first Scream movie. It didn't really lean into it as much as I would have loved.
Okay.
And then, with that being said, it builds on these characters and emotions that Scream 2 never even did. Not in the same way. And overall, I really think that from, mild, cinematic shots, maybe toned down a bit, the kind of up close and personal nature and the gore, it all comes together to me to be an 8.5 leaning into a 9.
So
I'm rating this the highest I've rated a Scream movie.
Okay.
And I know,
Okay.
I really
If anyone's watching still, you tick them off immediately.
Why?
I don't know, just because everyone. I mean, Scream the original, man. It's a classic.
Listen, I'm really struggling with the idea of I just saw this movie. It's a bias.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we'll rewatch later, and then we'll see what we
But
think.
that's why I really wanted to vocalize specifically my criticisms to get that out there. But really, I think the high points of this movie outshine certain points of the previous. Now, the only thing I can really say over that Scream 1 truly has over this movie there's 2 things actually.
All right.
Nostalgia,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
And an incredible cast.
Okay.
But this cast is superb.
Yeah, this cast is amazing.
I'm not even trying to compare them, but I think this cast is just as reasonably good.
They're just as memorable.
Yes.
All the characters
100%.
are 100% memorable.
So
That you can't say about 2, 3, and 4 very often, except maybe one character which they bring back, Kirby. All the other characters are kind of whatever.
Yes, and this movie has the benefit of bringing in legacy characters. So overall, I just really think this movie's good, and 8.5 is where I sit.
Okay. Well, I am the biased Scream fan here, so I've loved every movie ever since the original. And with these reviews, I tried to keep my bias out of it because I wanted to be more critical because I didn't want to rate all of them 10 out of 10. It'd be kind of cringe. So with the original, I rated it a 10 out of 10. So even though I said I didn't want to, I actually think Scream is a phenomenal movie in general, even with bias aside. Scream 2, I think I gave it 8.5 maybe?
Yeah,
I think I went 8.5.
You were in the 8 range somewhere there.
Scream 3 I originally went to 6.5, but I'm bumping it up to 7. Objectively, it's not very good.
I gave it a 5.5.
With Scream bias a little bit, I tried to keep it out, but just because it's Scream related, I bumped it up to a 7. I know I probably shouldn't have, whatever.
Disgusting.
Scream 4, I think I gave it an 8.5 as well for match Scream 2. And then with Scream 5, I think I gave it a 9. Because at the time when we watched it, I was feeling it, and I still love Scream 5. It's amazing.
It's a good movie.
With not as many negative, it could be because of the hype that we just watched it, and like we're really excited. But coming out of that theater, almost a 10 for me.
It's good.
I'm giving it a 9.5. It's my number 2 in my rank right now.
That's fair.
I can't give it a 10 out of 10 just because it might just be the hype. But like it was done phenomenally, and Radio Silence took Scream in, and they are doing awesome with it. I'm glad it wasn't just a cash grab director, and you could tell they love these movies.
For what it's worth, I think it says something that this is my highest rated out of the entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, we didn't talk about it much before coming into this podcast. You're getting a lot of our
First
thoughts
thoughts.
at
Yep.
each other fresh. But one thing that we did kind of talk about was like our expectations going into the movie, and I didn't have any. I mean, I was excited for it. I mean, I guess, but I didn't really think too much about it. I watched the first trailer. That was about it, and that's just what I've been kind of doing now, and it's helped me. And
Yeah.
I went in with no expectations, and it kind of blew them away. So I almost feel like I'm partially immune to the hype on this one.
For me, I was super hyped for this movie, had high expectations, and then they were met. Maybe even a little bit better than what I thought it was going to be. So yeah,
There you go.
that's our rankings, and I think now it's time to actually get into the gritty.
Yeah,
The gritty.
we'll get into spoilers here for a second.